and welcome to Kickass Conferences Talk Show. I'm Nessa Jimenez, the Operations Manager for Kickass Conferences.
And I'm Isaac Watson, Executive Producer.
And this is the show where we sit down to talk about everything events. Now, today our topic is the key characteristics of a Kickass conference host.
And now I want to clarify, what is a Kickass conference host? So we are producers, so we handle the strategy and execution, all the logistics, things like that. A host is really going to be our client who we work with. So the host is somebody who brings their audience together. They may also be the on-stage MC, or we may bring in a different person to actually do the MCing from stage. But when we say a Kickass event host or conference host, that's who we're talking about, is the person that we're working with who's organizing the community and the audience around the event, not purely, managing things on stage.
Yes, so it's the person that's bringing us all together, and they're the reason behind all of it, not necessarily the person that we see on stage.
Yep.
Okay, cool. Thanks for that distinction, because I think that when we say the word host, that's what people are thinking. They're thinking of the MC, and that's two different things. Okay. We came up with 3 what we consider key characteristics of a good host, and this is based off of our experiences with clients in the past, based off of things that were like super great and things that were not so great. And we came up with these 3, and we wanted to talk about them today. So let's jump right in. The first one is purpose.
So as we've worked over the years with our clients, I think it's important to acknowledge that not everybody is perfect at hosting a conference.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's important to identify, like, what are the good things? What are the things that definitely need some work? Things like that. Purpose always, I think, comes down to one of the most foundational elements. If a business owner or a community organizer, what have you, comes to us and wants to organize an event, the first thing we're going to do is ask why.
Exactly.
And if you don't have that sense of why, then you have a lot of work to do to get there. So having that clear vision for who is this for? Why are we doing this? What is the need? How committed are you to the community? These are all things that are going to help set that foundation for building the strategy on top of it. Part of that is also being goal oriented. Knowing how you're going to measure your success, or what success looks like for this particular audience. So having that clear vision is really, really key.
Yeah, and when we work with people, when they come to us, they don't necessarily have it all planned out, right? Like, we help them get more detailed on, I guess, the true core of their purpose. Because sometimes they'll come to us with what they think is the purpose, and then when we work with them, we help them discover what the actual purpose is. Like, why do they actually want to do this? And
that is one of our favorite things, is like challenging your assumptions as a client and really teasing out, like, what is that true purpose?
Yes, and I think things always work better the more specific we're able to get with people, or the more specific that they come to us, right, with their idea. And in terms of goal-oriented, they might not know how to get there, and that's how we help them. But they do have this image of where they want to get to with the audience, or with their idea, with their vision for this conference that they're trying to put together.
Yeah. I feel like when it comes to commitment to the community, it's about having a really clear sense for what need you're fulfilling for the community, and being committed to helping them through that. It's not always about altruism. It's not always about pursuing a cause per se, but there is this dedication to helping, this kind of service-oriented attitude that really helps to fulfill those goals.
Yeah, it's coming at it with this idea of, I have this thing in mind, and I know who it's for, or I know who needs it, or I know where it fits. It's not it's not I want to do this because I want to make $1 million, right? It's when they come to us and they say, this is a thing that needs to exist.
Yeah.
Cool. Now, our second key characteristic is curious and vulnerable.
So I think this is like a 1-2 punch. So curiosity in and of itself is a great thing. Curious people are fantastic. But adding to that a layer of vulnerability changes the way that curiosity works, I think. So for me, what that means is that you're willing to experiment.
Right.
That you are willing to adapt if something isn't working, or to change things up, that you're willing, that curiosity brings in this like willingness to listen and to
ask questions.
Yeah, absolutely. Trying to gain a deeper understanding of the people that you're serving. This goes back to the commitment to community. But it gives you the ability to be flexible and nimble and agile when it comes to creating this experience for people for the first time, especially.
Yeah, if someone were to come to us with purpose, with an idea, but they're not willing to ask questions, they're not willing to mold the idea, they're not willing to be open to allow us to give them ideas or to ask them questions about, do you think it's this or would this work better, right? It goes hand in hand with being open and yeah, curious, wanting to know, like, how can I make this better? How can I bring people in to help me with this? And because when we say vulnerability as well, there is also like that willingness to be wrong and being okay with that, versus someone who's just like, nope, this is what this is, and I just want you to do it. Where that just becomes sort of a logistical thing, right?
Yeah, I think that that vulnerability brings transparency and being able to say, we're trying this. It helps to have a sense of confidence, right? But without, if you have too much rigidity around, implying that what's best, not listening, not asking questions, not asking the right questions, then that limits your ability to actually serve the community that you're bringing together.
And nothing is set in stone. So if you're coming to this with this expectation of like, it has to be my original idea, it has to be, and if it doesn't happen that way, then it's bad, right? Experimentation is, I'm going to try this thing and we'll see what happens. It's not, I'm going to do it and this is what's going to happen and it's going to happen this way because I said so. That just it just makes everybody miserable. It's not fun. It's not fun to work with people that have this idea of, because I said so and that's it.
Yeah. And to not to toot our own horn, but that's why we love challenging the assumptions from the get-go and saying, okay, well, is this truly what this particular sense of purpose needs? Are your assumptions coming into this in line with what the community actually wants, or how they expect to gather, or what kind of content you plan on presenting, what format? All these questions come to bear, and having that flexibility in how that's all presented and put together can really help you adapt to serving your audience's actual needs.
Yeah, and that just made me think of when we work with a new audience on a new event, when we do the surveys, when audience surveys, where it's literally just us asking questions of like, who are you? What do you want? Right?
Yeah.
Like, we think you want this conference, we think you want this, but you tell us, right? Like, what are your needs? What are you looking for? And there are a lot of people who are not willing to do that. They do not want to do surveys. They do not want to ask people questions, right? They just want to do the thing and they did it, right?
And I think that that comes down to what I would call an unhealthy amount of ego. I think that there's
Mm-hmm.
room for healthy ego in any leadership position, any community organizing position. Um, that's just part of what leadership is. But when that ego gets in the way of letting a leader or an organizer or a host um, truly serve the audience, that's where we get into trouble.
Yeah, and I mean, ego's good. It's not like it's all bad, but if that's how strongly you feel about it, it's like write that book. You better write that book. Like or have a YouTube channel where you just sit there and talk at people, right? Because the
Yeah.
whole thing with conferences is that it's bringing people together. It's not this is the me show and you have to listen to me and that's it.
Yes, exactly.
Perfect. Okay. Now, our last characteristic that we'll talk about today is a strong work ethic.
Yes, this is key. And this
Mm-hmm.
is a little more brass tacks and logistical,
Mm-hmm.
but when it comes to actually putting the thing together,
Mm-hmm.
even if you were to bring in a team like ourselves, you have to do the work and you
Mm-hmm.
have to know where to put your time and resources. You have to know that it does take work. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that a lot of people um, for either forget or are ignorant to the fact that organizing a first time conference in particular
Yeah.
is like launching a new product or starting a new business. And
Yes.
so that
Yes.
takes time, energy, resources, whether that's developing an identity for it, putting together copy, a marketing strategy. All of these things take time, take skill, take energy. And so having that work ethic, being willing to roll up your sleeves and say, yeah, I'm in it, I'm committed, and to be willing to invest in what truly matters too.
Mm-hmm.
Conferences are not entirely DIY. It's some people can do it. Some people are naturally attuned to those skills, and that's great. I would say that the majority of people aren't. And so it's
Mm-hmm.
knowing, where do I need AV help? Where do I need strategic help? What can I invest in that's going to make the most impact on fulfilling my purpose and my vision for the community, and help enable this to succeed?
Yeah, and we've talked about it before. There's all kinds of apps, there's all kinds of tools, there's all kinds of vendors, there's all kinds of things. Like, that's not the issue. The issue is, okay, what of all of this is actually what I need? Is actually serving my purpose? Is actually helping me reach the people that I want to reach?
Mm-hmm.
It's not a tools issue, right? Like, it's not just the logistical, because there's so many things out there to do the thing, and now with virtual as well, there's like a million more things.
All the
It,
apps.
yes, all the apps, all the things, but it's how is this serving me? The strategy of, is this working? Is this what I'm actually trying to do? Does this fit with the story I want to tell? And I want to go back to that comment you made about it being like a product launch or it being like starting a new business, because that really is what it is. If you've decided to launch a conference, what you're saying is, I'm going to dedicate the next 12, 13 months to launch this product, and it's a conference, right? Like, we have the date and we have this amount of time, and all of these things need to get done within that amount of time, and you have to be there. It's not something that you just say you're going to do it and then you do it. It happens. No, it really takes dedication to be like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to give this the attention that it needs. And just like a business, there are phases, there are steps, there are things that need to happen as you build up to that launch. And then guess what? You launch it, and that's like the beginning. The conference itself is actually the beginning. Because after that, there's a whole other thing that has to happen of and analyzing, right? Did this work?
Yes.
Did people actually like it? Do I want to do this again?
Right.
Which, yeah. Um, so this aspect of it is a business, you have to have that entrepreneurial mindset of, I'm going to treat this like a business. This is not a joke. This is not a game. This is not a thing I'm kind of playing with. It's,
Yeah.
you're gonna do it or you're not gonna do it.
Yeah. And I think when it comes to, if you're a larger company who's putting together, a conference around a particular industry, um, that also goes to dedicating internal resources. Or if you can't dedicate internal resources, being willing to invest in external
Mm-hmm.
resources, whether that's developing a brand identity, a sub brand for a conference product.
Mm-hmm.
If you're busy working on a product launch and your team's dedicated to, all the design work involved with that, and you
Yeah.
don't have the time and energy to dedicate toward creating an identity for the conference you want to host, then you have to be able to hire help to do that, because
Yeah.
that's
Something.
still
Yeah.
necessary.
Something has to happen. Exactly. It has to get done at some point by somebody.
Yeah.
And I think trust is also, I guess this is kind of going back to the curious and vulnerable we were talking about before, but trusting that if I can't do it myself, or if my team can't do it, I need to trust that the people that I'm bringing in can do their jobs, and I'm not gonna uh, feel the need to micromanage or question every single little thing because I'm terrified and I just don't trust other people.
Yeah. It's interesting that you bring up trust, because as we were kind of chatting through what
Mm-hmm.
these characteristics were, I almost brought that up as a fourth one. Um,
Ah.
because, and it's not just trusting in the team you're working with, it's also trusting the audience, it's trusting the process, it's trusting the your own time and energy. And maybe I didn't bring it up because I wasn't quite sure how to articulate it, but I
Mm-hmm,
think
mm-hmm.
that maybe there's this underlying trust factor that kind of cements all of these together.
Yeah, let's go into that then. Let's talk about a little bit more about that because it's funny that you thought of it, but you didn't mention it because I also thought of it, but didn't mention
Ah.
it.
The hidden fourth
Yeah,
characteristic.
it's a bonus. The bonus one, trust. Yeah, because for me it's frustrating. If we work with someone and I feel like they don't trust me to do the thing that they paid me to do, it's so hard because it's like you paid me to help you. Please let me help you. Please
Right.
let me do the thing. And they want to, but at the end of the day, like there's like this internal struggle within themselves, and they second guess and they question, and that makes the process more difficult for everyone in the
Yeah.
end. Because if I mean, we go to the clients for approval for things, right? So that's kind of like it slows the process down because if that person is maybe say indecisive, they're not sure where to go, and we make a suggestion, but they're still they still don't go one way or the other. But then we have vendors that are waiting for us to say like, hey, just checking in. What did they say? And yeah, that makes the process just awkward all around if there is a lack of trust, right?
Yeah, and I think so. The trust carries into the purpose characteristic. So if
Mm-hmm.
you don't trust your own vision, if you're constantly second guessing yourself, if you don't trust the goals you're trying to hit, if you don't trust your own commitment to community, that's going to affect everything else along the
Mm-hmm.
way. So you have to
Mm-hmm.
trust in yourself and your own purpose. And I think that the trust plays into the curiosity and vulnerability. It's trusting the audience.
Mm-hmm.
Um, we've seen, I was talking about an event I attended where there was an enormous amount of trust literally put in the community to self manage
Mm-hmm.
a Slack group during the
Mm-hmm.
event, right? That takes a lot of, just saying, I mean, code of conducts are absolutely necessary and should be
Mm-hmm.
enforced. And that's like a whole other thing. I'm not saying those shouldn't exist, but trusting the audience to seek out their own solutions, to provide candid feedback, to trusting them to trust you even. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's kind of this cyclical thing, but that that trust in vulnerability, in experimentation, in and this is where it starts to get a little nebulous because we didn't really talk about this much.
But it starts to mix with the curiosity thing, because trusting that audience is because they were curious enough to get to know that audience. Because let me tell you, you cannot trust just any old audience with a chat or with a Slack like that. Like when you told me they were doing that, I was just like, no, I can't deal, because I've moderated things before, and it's just like it's just like it's the internet. You've been on the internet, you know how it works, right? Yeah. And if there's an opportunity to be a jackass, people will take it. If there's an opportunity to like another thing is the shared, like when people do the shared whiteboards.
Yes.
So I have to sit there like, okay, I have to be prepared to erase the penis drawings, because it's coming. Yes. You know it's going to happen. So that's something like, you really need to know the audience if you're really intent on doing these kind of things, trusting people with that. Yeah.
Well, and I think it's about the people who do it really well, the hosts that do it really well, have the ability to communicate their level of trust. So I worked on an event for 5 years that leaned very heavily on a team of volunteers to help manage the event. And that team, it was anywhere from 50 to 100 volunteers over the course of a week. We asked an enormous amount of commitment from them, and they always delivered. And something that came through every time we did an orientation, every time we onboarded a new volunteer, was letting them know that we were empowering them to fulfill the values of the event in whatever that way that meant. Putting the trust in them to say, you don't need to run something up the flagpole. If you see an attendee who's having a hard time hailing a ride to this event, or if somebody's, sulking in a corner, or if you see an issue, like, you as an ambassador for this event should feel empowered to help that person. That level of trust begets a different level of commitment of service, as opposed to micromanaging, removing authority, making everything a escalation chain, and leaning on those values, implying that sense of communicating that sense of trust, I think is huge. I think in the case of this other event that I just attended, it was saying, hey, yes, we are giving you the ability to create whatever Slack channel you want. Keep in mind there's a code of conduct, and use your best judgment. And the community that this particular event has cultivated is receptive to that. And so they take on the responsibility of doing it intelligently and doing it meaningfully, in a way that, a free event of a couple thousand people on a shared whiteboard, like, of course there's going to be some graffiti, right?
Yes.
Because there's no filter around who's attending that. So that level of trust does play into the curiosity and the vulnerability. It's also a way to ensure that your audience is kind of ponying up and leveling up their level of engagement with the event itself.
They're empowered, I would say. That's empowered, and because there's also the element of discernment. I trust you to have discernment, right? To know what's right and what's wrong. Okay. So let's bring this all together. So we talked about key characteristics, purpose, curiosity and vulnerability, and the strong work ethic. Now, to close out this conversation, can we give people a takeaway of maybe how to get to that point? with those characteristics? Because if you don't got it, you can develop it. I don't think it's like
Oh,
you have to be
sure.
born with it or that's it. Right.
Right. These are not innate
Mm-hmm.
characteristics. Some people have them, some people develop them. I think if any of these three things are missing, that's a clear indication of what you can focus on.
Mm-hmm.
So, if you have an unhealthy amount of ego and you aren't curious and vulnerable, maybe it's hard to identify that that's the issue because the ego gets in the way of that. But
Yeah. But I would say
taking
for that one is ask more questions. Learn to ask
yes,
questions and listen to the answers.
yeah, I think so. So let's start from the beginning. So
Mm-hmm.
when you're looking at your purpose,
Mm-hmm.
if you don't have a clear vision, that is the opportunity for some deep work
So
on your own to
meditation,
see what that is.
thinking, think
Not to
about it.
bring on an existential crisis,
Yeah.
but um, that is like reason number one why you should take a
Mm-hmm.
step back and think about, what is influencing me in this direction.
Mm-hmm.
Why am I committed to this community? Start asking the
Yeah.
internal whys,
Yeah.
and journaling and whiteboarding and
Yeah.
team conversations and things like that are all really, really helpful.
Yeah. And my favorite question is why. Just keep asking why.
Absolutely.
If I think this is the answer, why do I think that? Oh, I think this, so why? Just keep going until you can't go anymore, and that'll take you through a lot of routes.
Yes. And I would add to that working toward a disputable purpose,
Mm-hmm.
in the words of Priya Parker, who we love,
Mm-hmm.
from her book, The Art of Gathering, asking the why until you get to a point where you can argue confidently for something. So
Mm-hmm.
it's not just, well, I love it. It's not just, these are my people.
Mm-hmm.
Getting really down to, can I clearly identify with this purpose, either yes or no? And can I make an argument for why yes? Can I make an argument for why no? That's important. I think from a curiosity and vulnerability standpoint, setting the ego aside, starting to ask more questions of others. So
Mm-hmm.
purpose is asking questions of yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Curiosity and vulnerability is asking questions of others,
Right.
adapting the curiosity skill, starting to have conversations. That's a great opportunity for, don't like the term focus groups, but customer
Conversations, just
or
conversations.
having dialogue with people
Mm-hmm.
about these
Mm-hmm.
things. And then the work ethic, if you feel like you don't have the capacity or the bandwidth to take on something like this, I would then say it's worth asking why you think this is necessary and
Mm-hmm.
why it's not a priority,
Mm-hmm.
because that might reveal some underlying reasons why. Perhaps you feel compelled to do this because it's a natural next step, but if you don't have the resources available to do it, then you can't do it.
Yeah.
I think it's also a matter of identifying what you are willing to invest in it. And this
Mm-hmm.
is a conversation I've had with clients over the years, is we start looking at budgeting in certain areas where, maybe ticket sales aren't materializing as they thought they would. If you build it, they will come scenario doesn't happen. And I start to ask, okay, how much are you willing to invest to make this happen, to set this foundation work for the event, especially as a first time conference? If you can put a number behind that, that will help you identify how much resources you are willing to put into the actual production of the event.
Yeah, and I mean, it's either time or it's money. If you don't have the time, you've got to bring in a team, and that requires an investment. So, how much does that cost to you? How much are you willing to put into that? So, the sweat equity, but also the financial investment of I want to do it and I need help. So how much am I able to invest in that?
Yeah. And if not now, when?
When exactly? Yeah, because it just
Um,
might not be the right time now.
exactly. Especially if you know it's going to take a 12 to 15-month commitment to make it happen in the first place. You're looking out 2 3 years, maybe 5 years in advance. And if you know, oh well, my business is going to be at a point where I can support this from an
Mm-hmm.
investment standpoint
Mm-hmm.
in 3 years, then great, you can start to lay the groundwork for the other two traits, the purpose and the curiosity and vulnerability, to get you there in the future. For me, this draws a lot of parallels to the entrepreneurial mindset.
Mm-hmm.
These are very similar themes to what you see in successful small business owners and founders who have this clear vision and sense of purpose, who are curious and vulnerable, who are willing to put in the time and energy as a small team or as a solo team, to make it happen. And so those are that kind of skill set and mindset lends itself really well to organizing and hosting a conference.
I agree, but I would also say we need to be careful because just the phrase entrepreneurial mindset, like it is said so much everywhere that it just means nothing. And there's this sort of stereotype of like the lone wolf entrepreneur, which is a complete
Sure.
lie. So I would say be careful with that, right? Like, it's not this lone wolf. I'm the entrepreneur. I did it all by myself, kind of thing. It's definitely a group effort, and it's if it's about bringing community together, it's kind of weird to then try to lone wolf the whole thing because you're an entrepreneur, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And newsflash, there's no exit strategy for hosting a conference.
Yeah.
You're doing it or you're not. It's not like you can
Yeah.
go sell it to someone else. So that is another way in which it differs.
Yeah. Yeah. I just, you know how we are. Like, there's certain phrases and things of like the mainstream that I'm like yes, but no, because I don't. There's like this whole not stigma, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah,
Like,
it's like thought leadership, right?
yes,
Like
that's
it's
another one.
those
It's
phrases that
loaded.
leave a bad taste in everybody's mouth. It's a loaded thing.
Yes,
There's
yes,
there's there's reason why it exists, and those reasons are valid, but it's been abused and
mm-hmm.
misguided in a lot of ways. So 100%.
Yes, perfect. Okay, so thank you so much, Isaac. This was another great conversation. So I want to say thanks to everyone for watching and or listening. You can find us at kickassconf.com. And if you enjoyed this, please feel free to share it. And we'll see you next time. Bye bye.
Take care.